Should I get going?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here. It's good to see so many people. I have to say, first of all, that I am not an expert on Palestine, and I know there are a lot of people who are experts, so you can correct me if I say anything wrong. This is not the area of the world where I do research, but I did have the great opportunity to go to Palestine this year in a very intensive and very informative trip, and I learned a lot. I went as a faculty fellow with a Palestinian American research organization. We were like 15 faculty from different universities in the US. We were all representing different disciplines and had different interests in terms of why we were going to Palestine. Many of us had worked, most of us had worked on issues related to human rights in other parts of the world. So it was not only the trip, it was everything that we did, and then the people that I went with. We were constantly talking about what we were seeing in Palestine. The objective of the trip was, first to be witnesses to what is happening in Palestine, and this is, being there, it is something that, you can read about Palestine, you can watch the news, you can read newspapers, but until you go there, you don't realize the level of oppression and violence that Palestinian people are experiencing in their everyday lives. So it is not until you're there that you really realize the horror of everyday oppression that people are suffering as a result of a very extremist Israeli government. So it was an eye-opening experience. And also, of course, part of the trip, or part of the objective, was to create networks of solidarity with organizations there and with academics, and that's how, Rami Salam came here as part of that network. And I know there are other people like Derica who are part of these networks that I went with to Palestine. And of course, for us as educators, it is also important to come back and teach about what we learned and what we saw. It is important for young people in the United States to understand what its country does in other parts of the world. And I think Moye already talked about all that, so I'm not going to do that. Can you do the next slide? So these are the places that we visited. We were in the West Bank the whole time. We went to East Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Abu Dis, and I don't know if you can see Hebron, Ramallah, Nablus. We went to Jericho as well, Nazareth, and to Haifa, all the way up there. So we did a lot of every day was from 8 in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. We also were able to visit a lot of different places. Next. And I'll just leave them up there for you to read. I don't know if people can read in the back, but we went to 5 different universities, including Birseit University, which is where Rami is coming from. We talked to students, to professors. They talked about their research. It was very interesting. We also went to a lot of different organizations that are working with human rights, and also that are cultural centers. There's the Civic Coalition for Defending Palestinian Rights. We went to the Stop the Wall Palestinian Grassroots Anti-Apartheid Wall campaign, which was very interesting. So it was a really good view, or just general view of what is happening. Although when I left, I felt that I knew a lot less. So I still think that there's a lot to learn. And so anyway, I'm just going to share a few reflections and thoughts. As someone who has worked with violently displaced populations in Latin America for a long time, and who also has studied how populations at the local level build networks of solidarity to be resilient. So, why did I become interested in going to Palestine? I think I've always been interested, but my own country of origin, which is Colombia, has also stands out like Palestine for its long-term armed conflict. Israeli occupation, I thought, mirrored U.S.-founded violence and control in Latin America, where U.S. military, economic, and political intervention has been widespread for many decades. It was hard to be in Palestine because the situation is even worse. So anyway, I also was interested in learning more about the wall that I thought separated Palestinian and Israeli territories, like the wall here in the US-Mexico border. I have been crossing this border for the past 30 years, first as a Colombian citizen, and then I got dual citizenship, and now I cross with my US passport, and it makes a huge difference which passport I use. But again, this border wall here in the US-Mexico border is, I wouldn't say it's nothing compared to what is happening in Palestine, but the situation in Palestine is certainly much more difficult to comprehend, to grasp, and to understand how people are actually dealing with it. So I'll share some photos. I don't want to take too long. I'm going to try to be quick. About things that impacted me a lot. So I'm not going to talk about most of the trip, but just a few things. And I want to frame the presentation around the topic of fragmentation. How Israeli occupation in the context of settler colonialism has created a system of separation and fragmentation that impacts every Palestinian, everything Palestinian, every day and all the time. The level of violence is so pervasive. The wall, separates Palestinian from Palestinians. Palestinians experience militarization on a daily basis, and even the most privileged and educated of Palestinians. And that is very different from Latin America, where social class gives you a certain protection against abuse, but in the case of Palestine, it is not. So in other words, being there feels like there is no reprieve to the everyday level of distress that local populations experience. And the walls are not just physical barriers. As I heard people say, and probably most of you have also heard that, especially in reference to Gaza, it feels like Palestine is the biggest open prison, air prison in the world. At the same time, I want to talk a little bit about resilience. What I saw people are doing to be able to deal with all the difficulties. Palestinians are not just victims, they are agents, and they exercise agency in many ways, even at the cost of deep personal and collective suffering. So can you go before? The one before? Before. So this is, so the wall, let me just talk about the wall first. This is going from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and you take a car that takes you in this highway, and you see the wall all the time. So right from the beginning, the separation wall, the apartheid barrier, the Israeli government officially refers to it as the safety fence, which is, I don't know, very ironic. The wall is, I don't know, maybe 70% of it is completed. I'm not sure. All of it is already completed, yeah. So it's about 440 miles long, and I was very surprised to find out that about 85% of the wall falls within the West Bank, rather than going along the internationally recognized 1967 boundary, which is the green line. The wall, in fact, isolates about 10% of the land and about 25,000 Palestinians from the rest of the Palestinian territory. Next. So I have two maps here. The one on the right, or is it your left? The one on your left, you see that black line, it shows the actual wall. And as you can see, it meanders, that's the West Bank. It meanders into the West Bank very clearly, and it deviates substantially eastward from the green line, excuse me. That map also shows Israeli occupation of the West Bank, but the second map, the one on your right, shows it a little better. The West Bank is divided into three different areas, A, B, and C, which are administrative areas that came out after the Oslo Accord of 1995, and these areas were established as a transitional arrangement, but they have become sort of permanent, I guess, because it's been a long time. Area A, which is the green part, is under Palestinian administrative and police control, and it's about 18% of the West Bank. Area B, which is sort of the reddish part of the map, is under Palestinian Authority. Palestinian Authority has control, but it also shares security control with Israeli authorities, and it's about 22% of the territory. The majority of Palestinians in the West Bank live in areas A and B, and then Area C is administered by Israel, and it's about 60% of the West Bank. There are about 200,000 Palestinians that live in about 532 residential areas in this area, and about 400,000 Israeli settlers that reside in about 230 settlements. This shows the level of complexity and complication which complicates everybody's lives, every Palestinian life. The next one. The construction of the wall itself started 20 years ago, in 2002. And what you see now is all this network of walls and fences, closed military roads, as well as parts that are still under construction. These are horrendous gray slabs of concrete. And people, Palestinians try to make them better looking because they have to look at them all the time. People write on them, they write political messages, messages of hope, messages of anger, messages demanding that the international community do something. And you can't see it, but there's a little sign on that one that says, no more silent consent or loud indifference. And I think that's directed to the international community. Although there is a lot of solidarity. Anyway, the next one. The wall severely restricts the travel of most Palestinians and impairs the ability to commute to work within the West Bank and in Israel in general. Of course, it has been declared, the barrier has been declared a violation of international law by the International Court of Justice, and also the United Nations General Assembly has condemned and demanded its removal, but of course nothing is happening because the Western governments keep quiet. There's a very good film, if you have a chance, called 200 Miles. We actually met the director, and it's about this Palestinian man who cannot see his kids but from a distance because of the wall. The wall is between him and where his daughters live. So if you have a chance to find it or see it, I highly recommend it. Okay, the next one. Well, so you see all sorts of things on the walls. It's very interesting to just watch them and stand there and look at what people have been doing. And of course, there's a lot of criticism from all sorts of organizations, human rights groups, and you know, there's a lot of people argue that the wall is evidence of Israel's intent to annex Palestinian land under the guise of security. It has also been argued that the construction of the wall aims to undermine the peace process between Israel and Palestine, because it is unilaterally establishing de facto borders. The next one. Okay, this is, you know, sometimes, you know, Palestinians will draw nice, beautiful things on the walls, so they don't look so ugly. That one, the one on your left is in the Aida refugee camp, and the people in the camp burned the tower, so it has stayed like that. Okay, next one. So these maps show the level of land grab by the Israelis of Palestinian lands. And you know, you see in 1960, with the last two ones, the part that is black is Israeli settlements. I mean, I don't know how much people know about the history, but you know, you see in the maps in 1960, where there were over 750,000 Palestinians who lost their homes and became refugees, and their homes were confiscated by Israel. So you see that in the second to the last map. And the last one is from 2017, and of course you see a lot of Israeli settlements within the West Bank. Okay, next. So I should say that Israel continues to take land and property away from Palestinians to this day. It's happening all the time, and there is constant construction of settlements as you drive, you know, through the West Bank. The wall has also become, in many sections, sort of a canvas for graffiti art. This is near the Waldorf Hotel and Museum, which is a really, really interesting and cool place that actually uses humor to talk about the situation of Palestinians. So, you know, these graffiti art obviously is a form of resistance, right? It's a form of critique on what is happening. Next one. To exist is to resist, and you see, you know, how Palestinians in this painting are divided from their own Palestinian communities. The next one. This one I thought was very good because it's like the Voladores de Papantla in Mexico. These kids are hanging from, you know, the watchtowers, Israeli security. I thought it was interesting, so I put the Voladores next to it. But it's not, the Voladores are not next to it. So Palestinians have a really great and very sarcastic sense of humor. And I think this comes from suffering a lot. So you would think that people are crying all the time. No, people are laughing a lot because what else do you do, right? Huh? It is the lifestyle. And I think it is the same thing in my country where people suffer a lot. We just have to laugh because whatever. Nothing is gonna, not laughing is not gonna change things. The next one. Oh, you can't see that. This is something that it's a sign that you find when you're going to some of the Palestinian cities. It says, okay, so this is going to Ramallah. It says, oh, I can't see it. This road leads to Area A under the Palestinian Authority. The entrance for Israel citizens is forbidden, dangerous to your lives, and is against the Israeli law. So this is absurd. It reminded me of the little signs that they put of the migrants that cross the border as if they were criminals. Be careful, So, and the Palestinians. I never saw any Palestinian telling somebody that cannot go into Palestinian territory. So the next one. So the checkpoints. The checkpoints are everywhere. Here you have one place for the checkpoints, but in the West Bank, I don't know how many times we crossed checkpoints. They are heavily armed, heavily militarized, and I don't know if you do the next one. The people, the military that is at the checkpoints are all 18, 19-year-old kids who are doing military service, and they all carry M16s. It is pretty dangerous. These are kids who are not developed themselves, who are very volatile, and you're putting them in situations where they can just be angry at anybody and shoot their guns. And this is what happens, or beat up people. And I don't know if you can see the one on the left on the mirror, there's a woman showing her ID. This one, there's a guy showing his ID. So every time you cross, you have these kids that feel very powerful, and who knows what they are going to do. If they are in a bad mood, they might do something bad. So the tension is very palpable. And you're putting these kids in very volatile situations. And I do think it is an abuse against even Israeli children, because these are children, to be putting them in that situation. And actually, there's a lot of, we saw a few things on these Israeli soldiers that have PTSD, that have left the military, and that are afraid to talk, because the Israeli government will also go against them. Next one. I don't want to talk too much because I'm going to go over time. Another place I want to talk about, or another issue, is the case of Hebron, because it was so outrageous. And this is a place where walls and barriers, you're finding them inside the city. I was totally horrified. Hebron is about 30 kilometers, about 20 miles south of Jerusalem. It is the largest city in the West Bank after East Jerusalem, and it has a population of like 250,000, about. And it has about 700 Jewish settlers that are concentrated on the outskirts of the city. In 1997, since 1967, since the Six-Day War, the city has been under Israeli military occupation. Hebron is the only Palestinian city that is not under exclusive jurisdiction of the Palestinian Authority. In 1997, with the Hebron Accord, the city was divided into two sectors. H1, which is the yellow part, which is where most Palestinians live, and H2, which is the white part with the sort of purple areas, where you have about 30,000 Palestinians, and, oops, sorry, but I have disconnected my phone. 30,000 Palestinians and the 700 Israeli settlers, who are, for the most part, religious extremists. Sorry. Anyway, the next one. So you see barriers everywhere designed to stop Palestinians from entering areas controlled by Israelis. They're also designed to disrupt Palestinians' ability to make a living by forcing them to relocate elsewhere. So this is part of what used to be the market. Yes, Palestinians used to work there, they can't work there anymore. The next one. Now I'm not, so the whole contention about Hebron, and I'm just going to be quick about it, is this is a site of religious significance for
for Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions, and it is the site of the burial of three key patriarchal, matriarchal couples, where you have the tomb of the patriarchs and Ibrahim Mosque. So this is, because of these, the Israeli settler movement, the religious extremists, have wanted to have control over this area. This is the entrance to the mosque. It's hard to get in. You have to go into that room. They check your ID, check your bags. They ask you questions. So if you are Muslim, it's even harder. And if you are from Hebron, this is our guide, and he was telling us that a lot of the youth in Hebron have never been to the mosque because it is just too hard to get in, and it's risky. The next one. All security, these are checkpoints to enter, H2. All security arrangements and travel permits, even for local residents who are Palestinian, are coordinated between the Palestinian Authority and Israel through the Israel Military Administration of the West Bank. Palestinian residents constantly face delays, intimidation at the checkpoints. If you live in H1 as a Palestinian, you cannot bring a friend to visit you in your house. You cannot bring anybody from the outside. Next one. The historic center is in H2 of the city, and Palestinians are barred from using some of the principal commercial streets. As a result, half of the Arab businesses have closed down since 1994. The next one. So this is a sector where shops in the old, this was really shocking. It's a sector where shops in the old city that have been closed by soldiers. No, wait. This is a sector where Israeli settlers live in apartments that are on top of Palestinian shops in the old city, which is right by H2. What they do is they throw all sorts of trash into the Palestinians below, everything from garbage to urine to sewage. And what the shop owners started doing was to put metal netting to block some of the trash that comes down. But a lot of people have just stopped selling there. It was really horrendous. I just put 3 pictures there, but there was so much that was. I have a lot of pictures, so anyway. The next one. This is a sector of the old city that has been closed by soldiers, and this is where the wholesale vegetable and fruit market was. In these areas, Palestinians simply can't make a living anymore, right? And we were walking in this area and we saw these kids, with the Palestinian flag. They probably thought we were pro-Israel. I don't know. They were sort of taunting us, and so there is that young people are resisting in so many ways every day. The next one. We also realized that the flag, showing the Palestinian flag, is actually a big problem. It is a threat to Israeli security. And here we have our guide was being scolded by this 18-year-old, military, because 2 people in our group had bought Palestinian flags. And he was saying, this is threatening our security. You are being threatened. And he's like, they just bought, and he was laughing, and we were horrified that they could use the flag as a symbol of a threat. Okay. Next. And we were there, and then a lot of the a group of Israeli settlers came out, laughing and surrounded by security, because maybe one of us is going to do something to them. It's just a very weird, eerie feeling. Next one. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit, and I don't know how we're doing with time.
Take your time. Yeah, I don't have. Fine, go.
What?
Go ahead.
Okay.
What time is it? Oh, yes. Till after 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Okay, so I'm going to be quick. So the other place that I want to quickly talk about is that was also, I think, outrageous, was the Aida refugee camp, which is about 2 kilometers from the historic center of Bethlehem. Aida was established in 1950 as a refugee camp after 1948, after Nakba, where more than 500 Palestinian villages were destroyed. I think there are 18 other refugee camps in the West Bank that are controlled by or under the responsibility of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees. So refugees to this camp came from 27 different villages located between Jerusalem and Hebron. They thought that they were going to be there for a short time, particularly after the UN General Assembly adopted Resolution 194, next, that stated that refugees, so this is in 1948, the UN says refugees wishing to return to their homes and live at peace with their neighbors should be permitted to do so at the earliest practicable date, and that compensation should be paid for the property of those choosing not to return and for loss of or damage to property which, under principles of international law or equality, should be made good by the governments or authorities responsible. So after the UN said that, people thought, okay, we're going to be displaced for a little bit, and then we're going back home. So people locked their houses and took the key to their front doors, hoping that they would be back and use it again quickly. The key, and next one, and we know, of course, that they are still in the refugee camp. The key is a widely used symbol, as many Palestinians kept the keys to their homes when they were forced out of their homes in 48. It shows the Palestinian refugees sort of situation of limbo as they wait for their right to return to their homes. So this is the entrance to the camp. It has a huge key of return key as you enter. There's also a shop nearby that is called the Key of Return Shop, and it says, handmade jewelry and art from tear gas bombs and Bethlehem olive wood. You're passing through Aida refugee camp, the most tear gas place in the world. Come see how we take the ugly tear gas bombs that the Israelis shot at us and turn them into beautiful pieces of art. Take a piece of Palestine home. So yes, you go in and they have all sorts of interesting stuff, but it's very sad. The next one. So you have, at the beginning, you had about 800 people that arrived at the refugee camp. They were first in tents, then they were moved to these 3 by 3 meter rooms. And then today, you have about 5,000 residents in an area that is about 0.27 square miles. And the camp has been in operation for 74 years. Every year the situation gets worse because every year you have more refugees arriving. It is very crowded, and there's also like 50% unemployment in the camp. The next one. So the residents have to endure all sorts of security checks by Israeli forces every 6 months. And the killing of children by security forces has become a major issue. Here you see a wall, on that wall that says children. It's hard to see on the photograph, but this wall was done by Aida Youth Center volunteers who wrote the names of some 264 children that were killed by Israeli forces since 2014. And then on the other side, there's a poster on, also it's at the entrance of the camp, about this 13-year-old kid that was assassinated by these 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds that are the military force. Next one. Anyway, there are all sorts of problems. Okay, so all sorts of problems with water shortages and all that, but that I'm not going to get into that. But water is a huge problem too. Anyway, so I want to take a few minutes. Now, by the way, now you had 700,000 refugees in 48. Now there are about 9 million refugees in the West Bank, in refugee camps. So I want to take the last few minutes to talk about something positive. I saw many wonderful projects that Palestinians are doing to build resilience and to resist collectively, to undo some of that fragmentation caused by Israel control and by the international complicity of Western governments. So this is the Lehman farm. I visited them and it was just great. It is located in a village called Bilin, which is a very interesting place. It's in the outskirts of Ramallah. It is the only place in the West Bank where local population were successful in forcing the Israelis to move the wall back. Lehman, the farm, is an organic farm that is based on the model of community supported agriculture. And they serve, I think, like 30 or 40 families, I don't remember. Which is a big deal in Palestine, where a lot of the farmland has been taken by Israel for the construction of settlements, or for the construction of the wall, or not to use for anything, but for the future use of Israel. Anyway, almost a quarter of Palestinians are suffering from food insecurity. So this guy, Iyad, and I don't know how to say his name, Purnat. He's a leader in the area, and he heads the Bilin's Popular Committee against the annexation wall and settlements. And every Friday after prayers, people go to protest from this village, other villages, and international people to protest the theft of their lands. It was through them that they were able to get Israel to return the land where the farm is right now.
This Bil'ain, there is Iyad and his brother. They made a film a few years ago.
Yes.
Called Five Broken
Cameras.
And it's about.
Yes, so that's another, I was going to say, recommend that film. It's very good. Okay, the next one. So very quickly, the farm was established in 2016 to strengthen connections to the land, to bring back traditional agricultural knowledge and practices. The place where the farm is was where the wall was, and what was recovered from Israel. And it became an icon of Palestinian nonviolent resistance. Next one. When you're in the farm, you can clearly see, and this is looking at the settlement which is right next to the farm. You can clearly see the impact of Israeli settlement construction in rural Palestine. You can hear in this very peaceful farm the constant noise of construction. And this is a little video. You want to click and see if you can hear. And I don't know if we're going to need.
Oh, this one?
Yeah, so just click on the one before. Oh, I don't know if you're going to be able to hear it.
I don't see the.
Oh, when you transfer that.
This is just a picture.
Okay, I'm gonna. This is too bad.
You can do it there if you want.
Yeah, I have to bring it up. I'll do that. Something like that. So let me just turn it around and I'll put the microphone. I don't know if you can see, but anyway. So when you touch it, it doesn't.
Oh, it doesn't.
Did you hear? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's very eerie. And then I have another. I wanted to, end the presentation with. Okay, there it is again. With the voice of Yara, who is the manager of the farm, and I did a little video of her. So I'll just put it here.
Hello, we are at Muslim farm in Belarus in Palestine, and this is a community-supported agriculture producing vegetables and herbs and trees for 40 members to Ramallah the whole year. We have only natural and organic farming methods. We don't use any chemicals. We're regenerating the land using these techniques, and we are in an area that we're not allowed to build or have any control over our resource, while on the other side you have the Israeli colonial settlement that was built on the land of this village, that they have full access to resource and water and material to build. So you can see the contradiction a bit between how we love the land and how they use the land, and to claim that they are environmentally green, because you can see all the waste from the building, how they throw it in the nature. And we have the barrier wall separating our lands, not giving access to farmers to visit their own land. Yeah, you're welcome to come and volunteer and learn with us.
So anyway, yeah. So just maybe the last one. International solidarity. The next slide. I just wanted to show that. That's a huge, Nelson Mandela. And when you look into the plaque, it says, "We know too well that our freedom is not complete without the freedom of the Palestinians." So that's where I want to end. So, and now we have a real expert on Palestine here. Do you want to introduce Rami, or should I?